The morning sun glinted off the restless waves as a dark, weathered shape broke the surface of the South Atlantic. It was August 17, 1945, and the sleepy port city of Mar del Plata, Argentina, was about to become the epicenter of a global sensation. Out of the mist and salt spray, a German U-boat, U-977, emerged, its conning tower rising like a ghost from the depths. For the men on the docks, it was a sight both surreal and alarming. The war in Europe had ended months ago. Hitler was dead. The Third Reich had collapsed. Yet here, thousands of miles from the ruins of Berlin, a symbol of Nazi Germany had just arrived, unannounced and unexplained. Within hours, the news flashed across the world. Newspapers in Buenos Aires, London, New York, and Moscow blared headlines about the mysterious submarine. What was a German U-boat doing in Argentina? Why had it come so far, so late? Theories exploded like shrapnel. Some claimed the sub carried Nazi gold, looted from the vaults of Europe. Others whispered that high-ranking fugitives, perhaps even Martin Bormann or Adolf Hitler himself, were hidden among the crew, seeking refuge in South America. The wildest rumors suggested a secret convoy of U-boats, a Fourth Reich in exile, or a cache of advanced Nazi technology destined for a new war. As the Argentine Navy surrounded the vessel, tension crackled in the air. The crew, gaunt and sunburned, lined the deck in silence. Their uniforms were faded, their faces unreadable. The captain, Heinz Schäffer, stood at attention, ready to surrender. But behind his calm exterior, a storm of memories raged. For more than 2 months, U-977 had been a phantom, slipping through Allied patrols, braving the vast and hostile Atlantic, and living in the shadow of defeat. Now, as the world demanded answers, Schäffer and his men faced a new kind of interrogation. Not from depth charges or destroyers, but from the relentless curiosity of history itself. What really happened on U-977's epic journey? How did a single submarine, cut off from command and hunted by the most powerful navies on Earth, manage to cross an ocean undetected? Was it luck, skill, or something more? And what of the legends? The gold, the fugitives, the secret orders whispered in the chaos of Germany's final days. Were they the fever dreams of a world desperate for closure, or was there a kernel of truth beneath the layers of myth? To understand the full story, we must rewind to the dying days of the Third Reich. In May 1945, as Berlin burned and Allied armies closed in from all sides, the once mighty U-boat fleet was in disarray. Some crews scuttled their vessels to prevent capture, others surrendered, their war over in a moment of white flags and raised hands. But a handful of captains faced a different choice: to give up or to vanish into the blue. For Heinz Schäffer and the men of U-977, surrender was not an option. Their orders were vague, their future uncertain, but their resolve was absolute. They would not be taken easily. The decision to flee was not made lightly. The Atlantic was a graveyard for submarines. Allied aircraft and warships prowled the sea lanes, hunting for any sign of German steel. Every day brought new dangers: mechanical failures, dwindling supplies, the ever-present threat of discovery. Yet U-977 slipped away from Norway, diving deep and running silent. For 66 days, the crew endured a journey that tested the limits of human endurance. They rationed food and water, recycled every breath of air, and lived in a world of perpetual darkness and fear. The ocean was both their shield and their prison. As the days turned to weeks, the men grew gaunt and hollow-eyed. The monotony was broken only by the occasional sonar ping or distant explosion. Each time they surfaced, they scanned the horizon for enemy ships or aircraft. Each time they dove, they wondered if it would be their last. Yet through it all, a strange camaraderie took root. They were no longer soldiers of a lost cause, but survivors on a quest for freedom, or at least, for a future beyond the ruins of Europe. When at last they reached the coast of Argentina, the sense of relief was overwhelming. But the world was not ready to let them disappear quietly. The arrival of U-977 set off a storm of speculation and fear. In the fevered imagination of the post-war world, every shadow hid a Nazi plot. Every rumor hinted at a greater conspiracy. The truth, as always, was more complicated and more human than the legends. In the next chapters, we'll dive deep into the chaos of Germany's surrender, the fateful decision that set U-977 on its odyssey, and the harrowing details of the Atlantic crossing. We'll separate fact from fiction, revealing the real story behind one of the most daring escapes of World War II. Stay with us, because what happened aboard U-977 is not just a tale of survival. It's a window into the final, desperate days of a world at war, and the enduring power of myth in the aftermath of history. May 1945 was a month of endings and upheaval. Across Europe, the guns fell silent as Germany's unconditional surrender shattered the Nazi war machine. The once mighty Third Reich crumbled into ruins, its leaders dead or captured, its cities reduced to rubble. For the crews of the U-boat fleet, the news brought not relief but paralyzing uncertainty. Orders from command were confused, sometimes contradictory, and the threat of Allied retribution loomed large. In the cramped steel confines of U-977, Captain Heinz Schäffer faced a decision that would define his life and the fate of his men. Surrender meant internment, humiliation, and the unknown justice of the victors. But to disappear, to attempt the impossible and slip away into the vast Atlantic, offered a slim hope of freedom, but at the risk of death at sea. Schäffer weighed these choices as the world he knew collapsed, knowing there would be no easy answers. Inside the dimly lit control room of U-977, the air was thick with anxiety and whispered debate. The crew gathered around Captain Heinz Schäffer, their faces drawn and eyes searching for answers. The radio crackled with fragments of surrender orders, but nothing was clear. Some U-boats had already capitulated, their crews now prisoners of war. Others had scuttled their vessels, choosing to sink with their pride rather than face the humiliation of capture. Schäffer knew that surrendering to the Allies could mean years in a prison camp, or worse, being handed over to the Soviets. Stories of harsh treatment and retribution circulated among the men, fueling their dread. Amid the confusion, rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed that high-ranking Nazis were escaping to South America, using secret routes and hidden submarines. Argentina, with its history of German immigration and neutral stance during much of the war, seemed a possible haven. The idea was both desperate and seductive. If they could reach the distant shores of Argentina, perhaps they could start anew, far from the chaos consuming Europe. Schäffer weighed the risks. The Atlantic was vast and unforgiving, patrolled by Allied ships and aircraft. Supplies were limited, and the journey would push the crew to their physical and mental limits. Yet the alternative, surrender and the unknown fate that awaited, seemed equally perilous. After tense deliberation, Schäffer made his choice. U-977 would not surrender. Instead, they would attempt the impossible, a silent clandestine voyage across the Atlantic, evading detection and braving the ocean's dangers. The crew prepared for the journey with a mix of fear and resolve, aware that every mile would bring new threats. As the submarine slipped beneath the waves, the men of U-977 could only wonder what awaited them: freedom, capture, or a watery grave. The odyssey had begun, and there was no turning back. The first days of the journey were marked by a tense, almost hopeful energy. The men of U-977 clung to the idea that with discipline and luck, they could outwit the Allied patrols and reach the safety of distant shores. But as the submarine slipped deeper into the Atlantic, the reality of their ordeal set in. The U-boat became a world unto itself, a narrow, steel tube sealed off from sunlight and fresh air, where every breath was recycled and every sound echoed with the threat of discovery. Life on board was a relentless test of endurance. The crew rationed every crumb of bread, every drop of water. Fresh food vanished within days, replaced by canned rations and the sour tang of pickled vegetables. The air grew thick and stale, heavy with the scent of oil, sweat, and fear. The constant thrum of the engines was both a comfort and a torment, a reminder that movement meant survival, but also that any mechanical failure could spell disaster. Sleep came in snatches, haunted by dreams of home and nightmares of depth charges. The men rotated through their duties in silence, conserving energy and hope. The only light came from dim bulbs and the occasional flicker of a periscope view. Gray waves, empty sky, the endless horizon. Each surfacing was a gamble, a brief chance to recharge batteries and draw in precious oxygen, always shadowed by the fear of Allied aircraft or ships appearing on the horizon. As days turned to weeks, the psychological strain mounted. Tempers flared in the cramped quarters, and the monotony became suffocating. The crew had imagined a daring escape, but the reality was a slow-motion struggle against hunger, exhaustion, and the gnawing uncertainty of what lay ahead. The Atlantic, once a symbol of hope, became an endless, indifferent expanse. Yet through discipline and sheer will, the men pressed on, driven by the faint promise of freedom and the knowledge that turning back was no longer an option. The Odyssey was not the adventure they had envisioned, but a grueling test of survival that would mark them forever. When U-977 finally surfaced off the coast of Mar del Plata, Argentina, the world was caught off guard. The battered submarine, streaked with salt and rust, was an apparition from a war that had supposedly ended months before. As the Argentine Navy approached, the crew stood silently on deck, their uniforms faded, their faces gaunt from the ordeal. Captain Schäffer formally surrendered, but the questions had only just begun. News of the U-boat's arrival spread like wildfire. Reporters and photographers swarmed the docks, eager to capture the first images of the mysterious vessel and its crew. Headlines screamed of Nazi submarines on the run, and rumors erupted overnight. Some claimed that U-977 had smuggled high-ranking Nazi officials, perhaps even Hitler himself, to safety. Others insisted the submarine was loaded with stolen gold, priceless art, or secret documents meant to fuel a new Reich in exile. Theories multiplied with every retelling, each more sensational than the last. Diplomats, intelligence agents, and military officials from around the globe descended on Mar del Plata, determined to uncover the truth. The arrival of U-977 became a symbol of the lingering shadows of war, a tantalizing mystery that seemed to confirm every fear and suspicion about Nazi escape routes and hidden fortunes. But beneath the frenzy and speculation, one question remained unanswered. What was the real story behind U-977's escape? As the world demanded answers, the truth waited to be revealed, stranger and more human than any legend. After their surrender, the crew of U-977 was thrust into a whirlwind of suspicion and scrutiny. Allied investigators, eager to unravel the mystery, interrogated Captain Schäffer and his men for weeks. Every detail of their journey was dissected: where they had been, who they had seen, what they might be hiding. The world's press waited breathlessly for revelations of Nazi gold, secret passengers, or hidden agendas. Yet, as the questioning dragged on, the sensational headlines began to unravel. The truth was far less dramatic than the rumors. There were no high-ranking Nazis aboard, no treasure stashed in the submarine's cramped compartments. The crew's story was one of survival, not conspiracy. They had endured the Atlantic's hardships, driven by fear and uncertainty, not by secret orders or grand designs. Allied investigators found no evidence of clandestine missions or hidden cargo. The men were eventually released, their odyssey reduced to a footnote in the vast history of the war. The contrast between myth and reality was stark. U-977's journey, stripped of legend, was a testament to endurance and desperation, not intrigue or villainy. The world moved on, but for the crew, the memories of their extraordinary escape would never fade. Even as the facts of U-977's journey became clear, the submarine's legend only grew. The world, still reeling from the chaos of war, found it hard to let go of the tantalizing mysteries that clung to the vessel. Conspiracy theories flourished in the shadows, stories of secret Nazi enclaves in South America, of golden fugitives spirited away beneath the waves, of coded messages and hidden orders that would never see the light of day. For decades, books and documentaries would revisit the tale, each time adding new layers of speculation and intrigue. The fate of the crew was less dramatic than the rumors suggested. Most were eventually repatriated to Germany, where they faded into civilian life. Their extraordinary voyage remembered only in fragments and family stories. Captain Heinz Schäffer published his own account, hoping to set the record straight. But even his words could not silence the persistent whispers of conspiracy. The submarine itself was eventually scrapped, its steel recycled, its secrets, if any, lost to the depths. Yet U-977 remains a symbol of the war's unfinished business, a reminder that history is often shaped as much by what we imagine as by what we know. The unanswered questions linger. What truly motivated the crew? Were there other U-boats that vanished without a trace? What secrets, if any, still lie hidden on the ocean floor? As we look back on U-977's odyssey, we are left to wonder what stories remain untold, waiting to be discovered beneath the waves. The story of U-977 is more than a tale of steel and saltwater. It's a testament to the courage and desperation that defined the final days of World War II. In the fog of war, when orders were unclear and the future was uncertain, a handful of men chose to risk everything for a chance at freedom. Their journey was not one of gold or glory, but of survival against impossible odds. Stripped of myth, their odyssey reveals the human side of history, the fear, the hope, and the choices made when the world is collapsing around you. But even now, questions linger. What would you have done in Captain Schäffer's place? Do you believe all the secrets of U-977 have truly been uncovered? Or is there more to the story than we know? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Your perspective might shed new light on this enduring mystery. If you found this story compelling, don't miss our deep dives into other incredible wartime escapes and naval legends. Subscribe and join us for more untold stories from the world's most turbulent era. The next chapter in history is just a click away.